This is Revenue Marketing Raw. No fluff, no vendor pitches. Just the truth your CMO won't say out loud. Featuring Jeff Pedowitz and Dr. Debbie Qaqish. Let's go!
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're in another edition of Revenue Marketing Raw. One of my favorite topics that I've been railing on over the last couple of years is attribution, or the death of it. And yes, I know I was a big proponent of it for many, many years. But I've really come to realize that over the last couple of years, it's just fool's gold. So there's a lot of reasons why marketing attribution just isn't getting the job done and what we can do about it. So let's talk about the state of attribution in 2026. The numbers, they don't lie. So according to Gartner, only 30% of chief marketing officers feel confident measuring ROI accurately. So that's a big problem in itself, right? So no matter what kind of attribution model you're actually using, if 70% of you are not confident, that's a big gap. Next, only 41% of marketing organizations use attribution modeling at all. First touch, last touch, multi-touch, and most don't implement until month 6. And that's coming from Salesforce's 2025 attribution report. According to Forrester, B2B marketers now engaged with 27 plus touch points across 6 to 12 month sales cycles. Actually, I had to check that number again myself because I thought it was more like 17 or 18, but yeah, 27 touches. And that's only one person, mind you. So multiply that times 10, 15, 20 people on the buying committee, and you can realize why attribution is so difficult. According to Gartner's 2024 CMO spend survey, only 24% of CMOs believe that they actually have enough budget to execute their strategies. Companies that implement multi-touch attribution see a 19% improvement in marketing ROI within the first year. So that's encouraging, according to Forrester. But the gap is we're trying to measure increasingly complex journeys with tools that most organizations haven't even implemented yet. You might not even be aware of what's out there in order to do it. So number 2, why are traditional attribution models fundamentally broken? Well, first, as I mentioned already, the buying committee. It's not just the sheer number of people that you have on the buying committee now, 5, 10, 15, sometimes it could be as many as 20 people. But the problem is also that a lot of these people are not engaging digitally. So they are your offline buyers. There's discussions that are happening in boardrooms and conference rooms, but they're not actually happening online. So no matter how sophisticated your attribution models are, it's really hard to measure somebody that's not actually giving you the ability to measure. So, and second, that attribution, even with the models that we're using, they're designed to track the individual. They're not designed to track the company. So there's another gap that I've talked about for a long time. 50% of salespeople still don't even attach a contact to the opportunity. We're in 2026, for God's sakes, So, and that's if they actually add one contact to the opportunity. But as I just shared, if your buying community has 10, 15, 20 people, how do you develop that data correlation to the opportunity and get that attribution if you're not even actually associating the people with the opportunity in the first place? So you have the invisible influence. So not just the boardrooms and the conference rooms, what happens at trade shows, dinners, golf, all these things that happen, that doesn't get tracked. Next, you have the dark social problem. So things that happen in Reddit, Quora, private Slack channels, and so on. Most of the attribution models are not set up to track that. And then, there's a false precision model. So because the models are trained and honed in on the data of what it can track, it gives you a false sense of security. But if it's not tracking 70, 80, or 90% of the buyers, how can you take a model and extrapolate that to the others? It's false. So the problem with attribution models, no matter what kind that you're using, is it creates the illusion of certainty in an inherently uncertain system. So that's a big part of the problem. Next, the shift that's happening right now is moving from attribution to contribution. So the best CMOs out there are not thinking about this anymore from attribution, and who gets credit, but what actually drives incremental revenue. So they're signing up with a sales team for the same sales number, the same revenue number, and whatever quota sales has, marketing has. And we focus more on how much net new revenue do we get and how much do we grow our existing install base. That's really what matters the most. So there's also counterfactual thinking. So if we hadn't run events, we estimate we would have closed 3% fewer deals. So that's another element that's being introduced. So it's really about understanding which parts are worse rather than an all or nothing credit, which gets back to more of your marketing mix in total. The more the science of the marketing mix and getting the best ROI on the campaigns versus specifically proving which combination or specific touches actually got the job done. So think about this. A deal isn't half won, but across 1,000 deals, you can measure what would have happened within each channel if you turned it off or if you made a different change. And that starts to get you into more of like this heat map, more laser focused type of thing. So the question starts to change from which touch point closed this deal, which is almost impossible, to what would revenue be without this program or this combination. Next, we've heard of business income statements, but what about the marketing income statement? So starting to speak in finances language. This will get credibility every day of the week. So MarketBridge and others are introducing the marketing income statement approach. It's very much like a P&L, except it reports on 3 different contributions: last touch, multi-touch, and brand. It's going to use standard dimensions that can be compared over time, just like financial reporting. So this works because finance understands income statements, and so this is being formulated like an income statement with spend, costs, margin. And you get away from focusing in on algorithms, because an attribution algorithm is very difficult for finance to relate to. But when you put things into a budget or a P&L statement, that's much more relatable. And then you build on account level multi-touch attribution and brand contribution models, and that's how you can get to a more definitive financial statement. And then you move away from sales versus marketing credit versus financial acuity from marketing. So that's a big, big change. Next, account level attribution versus individual attribution. So this is the reality of B2B. So individual lead attribution is just never going to work. It's dead on arrival for a complex B2B cycle for all the reasons I've talked about already. So the shift that we're seeing now is moving more towards account level measurement and tracking all the different buying committee interactions. So think about building an account record overall, or a longitudinal record. So everything that you know about an account over time, how it tracks, and that starts feeding into more intelligence about the account. So each account has a mark, has a fingerprint, right? So what are the things that we're doing to move the needle? What kind of politics are happening over there? So if you've ever done like a Porter's 5 forces internally for your company, almost take that and spin it and do it the other way for your customers and accounts, and really start to understand what's going on in their world. And so it's really more about measuring the overall account journey, not chasing individual leads. Because if you truly are engaged in complex B2B and you have multiple products and services, your accounts are going to be at multiple stages of that life cycle all at the same time. You'll have very supportive, loyal advocate customers that have been with you for 10 years. And those same clients could be completely unaware of a new product or service that you might have, and they could be buying from your competitor. And then, so they're at all these multiple touch points. So we have to stop thinking about individual leads, individual attribution, and thinking about the overall customer lifetime value of an account, wallet share, where they are in their journey, and what we're doing to actually move the needle. Next, what are sophisticated teams actually measuring instead of everybody else? First, pipeline coverage ratio. So do we have 3-4x pipeline to actually hit our revenue target? So that's a big one. Not how much specifically is marketing contributing to the pipeline, all that's helpful, but overall coverage. Next, marketing influence pipeline. So what percentage of the pipeline had any marketing touches at all versus pipeline that had none? That gets you a little bit more clarity about where marketing is helping to move the needle. Velocity metrics. When marketing is involved, does that speed up the sales cycle? Yes or no? And you could look at that definitively. What's the win rate by marketing engagement levels? Depending upon which types of campaigns and programs and activities and spend, does the win rate go up or down? When there's more tailored ABX experiences that marketing is driving with sales, do those win rates go up or down? Let's start using the data of actual sales performance against true financial spend. That's going to provide a lot more clarity than attribution actually will. Say this 3 times, right? Cost of customer acquisition, or CAC, right? What's the payback period? So if we look at annual year-over-year marketing spend, and we look at rate of growth, gross margin of the customer, margin to support the customer, what's that payback period look like? Net revenue retention. Great to get new logos. We all need them, but where are we as a business? So for every $1 we spend to bring in a new client, how much of that dollar are we keeping 1 year out, 2 years out, 5 years out? So another big measure. We look at SEO ROI, which of course is dwindling for everyone in an age of AEO, and that has to be a new area of spend, right? What kind of payback are we getting on investing in AI-generated search, clickless search, agentic commerce, right? So these are all some of the emerging areas that CMOs have to pay attention to. Email marketing ROI, of course, is another good one in terms of channels, because dollar for dollar, it's probably the most cost-effective channel that we have. But again, as an individual channel, hard to look at specifically from an attribution perspective, but we can get a rate of return for overall investment in those platforms, right? So again, some of these metrics I'm throwing out there, you don't have to use all of these, but a lot of these are more towards the financial side of the house versus specific attribution models. So you noticed I haven't really spoken much at all about first touch, last touch, multi-touch attribution. I focused a lot more on financial modeling, but for marketing. Next, the role of AI in zero-click. So as I just teased this up a little bit, we are increasingly moving towards a clickless search. In a couple of years, reality is about 80% of your current traffic are not going to come to your website. That doesn't mean that your website's not relevant anymore. It's just that buyer behavior is changing. So now most of the activity has to happen wherever the customer is. So we have to engage with them on Slack, through Quora, through Reddit, through AI-generated search, whether it's Google or Claude or ChatGPT or Perplexity, all these other various channels. And then we're going to get into wearables, smart glasses, all these kinds of things. We're rapidly moving into this area. So as buyers start to do more of their search through all these other channels and they're not doing it on your website, you have to start focusing on measuring that. Rand Fishkin, we all know Rand, he predicts that actually 10 times more content is going to be consumed via AI summaries than actual web pages in 2026. So that is huge. All these bots that are going out there and then kind of generating and finding content and providing summaries for people. So the AI is getting smarter as businesses are just using AI to really crank out all this content, but the content is slop. So now buyers are getting more intelligent and smarter, and they're using bots to summarize the content that's out there. They're not even reading the stuff that you're putting out. So we have to get better at actually measuring all the stuff that's happening out there in a clickless search world. Really, but if you think about it, the whole funnel is changing, at least from not just from a sales perspective, but from a marketing perspective. The ability to measure the top and the middle of the funnel is rapidly going away. I'm not talking about like lead conversion or stage conversion. I'm talking about your ability to measure any kind of attribution or tying marketing performance because of all the stuff that's happening out there. So we're getting people now at the bottom. I mean, hell, if you have an e-commerce site, pretty shortly they could then you don't have to go to your website for that. They could just buy your product or service right through ChatGPT or through some other AI. And so we have to be able to start measuring that. Next, finance teams don't trust your attribution reports. We've talked about this a little bit already because finance is trained on very traditional statements, right? P&Ls, balance sheet, cash flow, budgeting, and they look at things in a spreadsheet with columns. Attribution models with all different kinds of weights and different things, that's not something they're comfortable with because it's really hard for them to get definitive grasp on it and use it. What do they care about? Did revenue go up? Yes or no? Did we hit the number? Yes or no? How much did we spend on your department, your team last year? Did the ratio go up? Yes. Well, there's a high likelihood you keep your budget or maybe get a slight increase. If the ratio went down, guess what? Your budget's getting cut. So they don't really care about what sequence or email or content drove, 14% or 7%. They're looking hard at numbers. And so that's what introduces that whole credibility gap with finance. Marketing's talking about leads and attribution and content performance and brand. And the rest of the business is talking about revenue, profit, gross margin, market capitalization, and so on. So you get the point. Next, practical alternatives. What can you actually start doing tomorrow? So if you're frustrated and you're hearing this, you're like, yeah, my attribution is not working, or yeah, I'm having trouble with finance or my board. What are some things that you can do? One, you can do holdout testing. So you can run programs in some segments, not others, measure the difference. What does a pilot campaign or a small focus test look like against the run rate? You can do a time series analysis. So you can compare revenue trends before, during, and after any of your major programs or launches or campaigns. You could do a cohort analysis. You can track customer cohorts by their first marketing interaction and measure the lifetime value difference of that. You can adjust your marketing mix modeling and play around with the different elements. You can accept imperfect data. So, a lot is, because we talked about the dark web and dark social and all those other areas, 25 to 50% of your data is going to be incomplete or inaccurate anyway. So you have to work with what you have. Simplify your models and focus more on contribution versus attribution. That'll be easier to track. Spend more time on board level metrics, not marketing metrics. So what are 3 to 5 metrics that tie directly to your business outcome? So organizations that are measuring more comprehensive models are going to see higher marketing ROI. So the key is really to move from pixel perfect or specific attribution more to comprehensive financial reporting on the overall state and health of you overall. So finally, the conversation that you have to have this quarter is your CMO needs to sit down with your CFO and your revenue leader, your revenue operations leader, and align on what actually proving ROI means. And don't leave the room until everybody agrees on what that definition is and that you're going to be held to that same standard. Stop defending attribution models and number of leads sourced in your forecast calls and start showing incremental contribution. That's going to be a lot healthier. Build a key performance indicator tree that connects marketing activity to pipeline, to revenue, to your business outcomes. So think about it as financial outcomes, operational outcomes that are sitting on top of any tactical or activity-driven outcomes. Get agreement on what are the 3 to 5 metrics that really, really matter and what is an acceptable level of uncertainty, even if there is some. Document any of your assumptions, right? For example, you don't believe in content influences 30% of deals, even if it's not the last touch. Put that in there. Even the best CFOs put assumptions into their financial modeling. That is acceptable. Your cultural shift. So moving from marketing, constantly defending yourself and feeling like you're under attack, to actually you're part of the revenue team and you're operating as one system. So this is really the conversation that's going to determine how much your marketing team gets credibility, not only in 2026 and beyond. So attribution, as much as we're under all pressure to report on it, it's not dying because the tools are getting worse. Actually, the tools are getting better. It's dying because the problem has changed and B2B has changed and the way people are buying has changed. So we can't try and solve the same problems when the whole landscape has changed. We can't use the same tools the same way. We can't use the same processes the same way. We have to adapt our mindset and change. So I think as you look into this year, the winners are going to be the ones not with the best attribution specifically. They're going to be the ones that move beyond it and are focused more on revenue. So that's what we got for this week. I'd love to hear your comments. Let me know what you guys are doing around attribution. And we'll see you guys all next week.